2. We're on series 2. And episode 2 of Holistic Emails, Email and More, a Q&A with. As you know, each 2 weeks, we showcase a different topic and have different expert panelists join us. And today we have some great ones. You know by now, it's not rehearsed. And the live audience, that's you guys. You get to ask us your burning questions about the topic at hand. Today, we're actually talking about lifecycle marketing. And I'm sure a lot of you have things that you want to let our panels answer for you today. We're thrilled that Series 1 provided to be such a popular show, and we're incredibly grateful to all of our sponsors who've helped us get these valuable discussions out to more marketeers. We want to give a special thanks to our gold sponsors, Iterable and Validity, and our 2 silver sponsors, RPE Origin and Email Expert. Thank you. So, if you guys have actually missed out on Series 1, don't worry. You can find the whole series on YouTube or on Holistic Emails website, so you can catch up. As you may or may not know, I'm Adiola Sol, the Senior Consultant at Holistic Email Marketing, and I'm your lovely host and moderator for Email and More. With me today, I have Kate Creamer. Give us a wave, Kate. There she is. CRM Marketing Manager of Framer. I have Alexander Beckendale. I feel like I didn't say that right, but give us a wave. And he's the Product Manager of Delivery Hero. And we've got Samantha Yodache, founder of the Source Experience. And we have the lovely Kath Pei, who's the CEO of Holistic Email Marketing. So thank you and welcome to all of our panelists. Our topic, as I said before, is email marketing or lifecycle email marketing. And whilst you're typing out your burning questions, I'm actually going to ask our panelists to just quickly introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with Alex. Hey, Alex. Hello. Introduce yourself to us today. Let the people know where you're from and what you do. It's like a dating show.
Absolutely.
Sell yourself.
So first of all, this is very, very difficult. The last name comes from Sweden. I am also more on the business side. So creating segmentation frameworks and enabling data for lifecycle management, essentially.
Amazing. And if you didn't know, Alex used to be a part-time model, but he doesn't want to say because, you know, he's modest. Look at those cheekbones. And Kate, tell us about yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I am an American living in Amsterdam these days. I work for a wonderful company called Framer. We're a design prototyping tool. So think any of the static design tools that you may be familiar with in the past, but with lots of interactivity, buttons you can press, toggles that you can click, things you can slide. It's honestly like working in a giant playground with a bunch of brilliant designers all day, every day. I'm really lucky to do what I do. And I think I have a similar background to Alex in a much smaller scale for smaller companies in that I'm a CRM marketing manager with a big passion for data and segmentation and lifecycle marketing. So I'm really excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. And I love the way you say data. You say it like Kath.
It's all of her good influence on me.
Lovely data. And last but not least, Samantha, please introduce yourself.
Samantha Yodache. I've been doing email for a very long time. I tried to count, and I think I get the number wrong. I think I try to not think about how old I am, but I've been in it for a while. I've worked on the agency side, the brand side, and the vendor side. I've kind of run the gamut. And now I have the Source Experience, which is a consultancy to do all things email with a holistic view on basically the customer engagement realm. And I'm excited to be here. Lifecycle marketing is a huge part of engaging your customers. So
amazing. And I see why you and Kath are so intertwined. You look at things from a holistic view, and we are going to introduce our lovely CEO of Holistic Email Marketing, which is Kath Pei. Please tell us about yourself before we get into it.
Hi everyone, I'm Kat Pei, as you know, CEO of Holistic Email Marketing, because Adiola just told you. And
sorry.
No, that's fine. So Holistic Email Marketing, we're a boutique consultancy, and we do everything holistically. We very much focus on the customer experience and the customer journey. And I have, I'm going to remember this time, I've written a book, so check it out. It's also called Holistic Email Marketing. Just a little note there. I actually called the agency and the book after the holistic approach that I started doing way back when. So it's not, the book's not named after my agency or my consultancy. So it's the other way around.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. So, like I said, while you guys are getting your questions typed away, I'm going to kick off with this one. What is lifecycle marketing, and why do they deliver such high ROI? I know. And you know what? Anybody can take this one.
I'll dive in.
Take it to the floor.
So I think the primary reason is life cycles tend to start the conversation and create that branded experience with the consumer. So you're connecting people to your brand. They've initiated that connection, and you're keeping it up, and you're letting them know, what you offer, what you can do for them, how you can help them. And it's a very engaging experience if done well.
True.
Yeah, definitely plus one, Sam. The reason that I am really attracted to lifecycle marketing, and people ask me all the time, I'm sure all of you have probably had the same experience when people ask you what you do, or you bring up email, there's this moment of oh, okay, weird. And it's not really that exciting. But the thing that I love about it is the lifecycle part, because it's relationship building. So email's the medium, but when you get the opportunity to sort of get to know your subscribers or see where they are in particular journeys and help them along their way and actually add something meaningful to their life with email, what a weird but wonderful thing to be excited about.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, your passion is amazing.
I definitely say that, for me, lifecycle marketing is, that's one of the things I am, like Kate, the most excited about with email, because they're inherently personalized in some way to where the person is within the life cycle. So whether they've just joined, or whether they're a loyal customer, or even if they hardly ever buy, but they've, bought multiple purchases in the past, or they've only ever bought one purchase, or purchased once. So it's really a case of you being able to recognize this and almost sort of show them that you know this as well. So it is that inherently personalized thing as well. And I think that's why, to get to the second point, that's why they deliver such high ROI, because they're so highly relevant. And they're, as Kate was saying, this is your chance to actually make them incredibly helpful, helping them to get to the next stage in their life cycle, helping them to get to buying that product that they had abandoned, helping them to make their first purchase or their second purchase, that kind of stuff. So it's really very much those helpful, parts, or the helpful nature of them, and the personalized nature of them helps to deliver the high ROI.
I love that. Thank you. Alex, are you going to add? I feel like you are muted.
I cannot really add much to this, to what have already been said, but to me, definitely as well, lifecycle management or marketing is a good form of personalization. So adapting your approach according to the user's maturity with your business. And similarly to what several said previously, I also became an even bigger fan of CRM and email marketing when I discovered lifecycle management, because essentially what you're doing is hand-holding your users during their journey through this relationship with your business, and helping them to achieve their goals across this journey. And to me, this is what makes me super passionate about CRM.
Aww, I like that. That's such a cute. It's just when you were describing it, I was just thinking of like a teacher with a school pupil kind of holding their hand, like, this is the way we go. This is what I need you to do next. And it's kind of like, yeah, it's the customer comes in and they enter, and you kind of take them from one place to another. It's guided, like guided, personalized comms. Yeah, I love that. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty. And whilst I'm asking these guys the nitty gritty questions, please, you lovely viewers, ask us your questions. Don't be shy. Get into the question box. No question is too big or too small. We can handle it. Right. Where should you start with implementing a lifecycle program? Where is the best place to go? So if someone doesn't know where they need to begin, what would your recommendations be?
Well, I usually
Samantha.
Yeah, I'll just come in and just start talking. So I think typically the conversation tends to start in a welcome type of life cycle, because obviously you need to greet people and bring them into the fold, essentially, and then start having that conversation with them. And especially if a brand either doesn't have anything currently, that's the logical place to start. Although at the same time, depending on the products they sell, if they're e-commerce or something a little bit different, there might be a better place to start. It kind of depends a little bit on the brand. But I would say typically it ends up being at that welcome phase.
Right. Okay.
I'm going to take a step back, or even 2 steps back. I'm going to start with the strategy, and even before the strategy, customer journey mapping, because lifecycle marketing is about mapping the journey, but also you also knowing your customer in the life cycle, and sort of your product range, really. And some companies will have products that have got different life cycles, a short one and a long one, and so on. So you need to intimately know all of that. Then you go and create the strategy, and then that's it. And I agree with Sam. From there on, then welcome, because you need to be setting the scene. You need to be welcoming them. But I like to call the welcome program actually a first purchase program. And that's probably because we tend to work with a lot of retailers, but very, very rarely, unless you're a publisher or, some other, or a subscription membership or something like that, more often than not, one of your goals, besides welcoming them, is also to get them to make their first purchase. So, and I like to name programs after what the objective of the program is. So I think that's a really, really good place to start. And yeah, I agree with Sam.
And can I just add that I love that you're the only person I talk to that has a rooster in the background?
Oh, Sam, you spelled it.
Usually dogs and cats.
Someone asked a question and I was going to put it out there. But yes, everybody, you can hear a live rooster.
Yeah.
I have to keep it interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone loves email more. You don't know what you're going to get.
Exactly.
You might get goats next week. You just don't know.
We actually do live very close to a petting farm or a petting zoo, so that's not entirely unrealistic. There's a question that Laura asked that I think is really relevant, Kath, to what you just said. So Laura said, where do you begin? With what you've already got and try to improve it, or start with what you want or a blank piece of paper? And I think that's probably the hardest thing to tackle, is figuring out where you start. Because if you haven't started something already, you don't have the data from past tests or things like that. And I think, honestly, like really simple user testing can be one of the best places. So just chatting with friends and family members or people around a table, if you can con your friends into sitting down and looking at your website or engaging with your product, and then laying out Post-it notes with like, here's what I understand about what your company does, or what I'm supposed to do with you, or where I fit in. And I think that can be really revealing in understanding what expectations you need to set up about your relationship with a person. So a perfect example for us is that at Framer, a lot of times, like it's a team product, right? So there's some UX designer or product designer on the team who knows exactly what Framer is, and they know how to use it, and they're really excited to pull their other team members in to work with them. And so they'll invite other team members, and our first interaction with somebody is a team invite email. So somebody gets this email, and all of a sudden they're like, well, what are you inviting me to? What is this? How am I supposed to use it? How are we supposed to collaborate? And so I think it's really important to understand the different entry points to a relationship that someone might have with you, and try to just approach that as a human being and explain, here's who I am, here's what I do, here's what our relationship can be together. And I think often that's a great way to start. And Sam, to your point about the welcome program, if you understand the entry points and you can help establish a relationship based on those entry points, that can be helpful.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. So a lot of you are kind of pro starting at the welcome. Like, if you're going to start anywhere, that's where you want to start. We've got a question come in, although I don't want to be a stickler, Cora, but you put it in the chat and not in the question. But we're going to get to it. In your lifecycle marketing? So that's question one. And what tips would you give for identifying the various segments / cohorts within your individual user base? So if I just ping back to question one, do you create segments and or cohorts within your lifecycle marketing? I'm having a feeling that a lot of you may say yes, but let's see who wants to take that initial bit on.
I'm happy to kick off an answer to this one that we can start building on. So to begin with, definitely yes. I have been using cohorts and segmentation at all companies I have been at until now. Not only lifecycle segmentation, but also other types of segmentation that are layered on top of this. So just to make it more complex with demographic, psychographic, needs-based segmentation, whatever makes most sense, and whatever resources there are within the company as well, I think is a usual constraint. But I think when creating the life cycle segments or life cycle stages, it can be as granular or as light as possible, or as is possible at your business. So of course, if there are fewer data science resources, then we probably have to keep it light in terms of acquisition, active or inactive customers, for example, just to kick it off with. And depending on the business's maturity and kind of user dynamics, I think that the focus tends to be at the acquisition stage or a new user stage for most companies. But of course, this varies from business to business. But yeah, then looking at how the retention, how the early retention looks like, or respectively the early churn looks like, and how that looks like in the long term. So for example, if you see that the majority of your user base churns permanently if they don't engage with you for a certain period of time, then you might want to use that time frame as a goal to engage your users within, in order to make sure that they stay with you for as long as possible, and hence increase lifetime value.
Yeah, I think just to add on, I think this you said it kind of perfectly, and I think especially when thinking about starting or initiating a new program, refining one is different than starting one. If depending on if it's brand new and you don't have a whole lot of data, simple is usually the best way to go, and then start branching out from there as you get learnings and more data to tell you more things. But if you have a whole bunch of data, looking at it and seeing, okay, what are the natural groupings? Are there some obvious segments that arise just from what you can see already behaviorally. And there might not be. And that's okay. That's why you start and initiate testing and see where you can find opportunities to have a deeper, more personal discussion based on what their needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of like planting information as well. Let's go back to that welcome email first purchase program. You can be planting different themes or different, categories or content within that. And then you can be, making assumptions and segmenting accordingly. So within that, their new customers or their new subscribers, and you don't really know that much about them. So behavioral wise, this is all you've got to go on, unless they've gone in and filled a huge form in, giving you their preferences. So this is a good way to actually start doing some early segmentation and, and hopefully give them a little bit more, segmentation or a bit more of a personalized experience within that actual life cycle stage. Obviously, what Alexander was giving us was, a lot more complex and everything, but this is a really nice way to actually start. So absolutely, cohorts and segments are totally relevant within all of the life stages.
Yeah, I liked what Alexander had to say too about how not everybody has huge data resources. And because I've run into that in so many different instances in the past, and I
way too many actually, right?
Yes, and it can be so frustrating when you want to test things. And fortunately, I'm lucky enough now to work with a rockstar team who's willing to pull stuff in and test. But one of the things that I've found to be really valuable when there's a thing that I want to do, and I go to my data team who are. They're brilliant. They're super enthusiastic and super excited to help. But there are a lot of times where they're like, we don't know if this idea is going to work. So are we going to put in the effort to pull in all of these new data points to create this new segment based on a hunch? How do we handle this? And one of the things that I found really valuable in validating ideas is just pulling a list out of BigQuery or somewhere else to say, okay, here's a static list. We can test an MVP with 500 people and decide if this segment or this particular data point is particularly helpful. And just running a quick one-off validation test to figure out if that works has been absolutely fundamental in prioritizing which segments we think actually will bring more ROI in or things like that. I guess the TLDR is you don't have to go through all of these big, long processes to pull in all of this segmentation data or get this whole brand new team or things like that to validate ideas. It's really easy to validate with small cohorts of people and then use that to kind of iterate and pull in next steps or automate things or things like that.
Great. I love the robust answers. Cora, I know that there is a second part to this and I am going to get them to answer it. But just I wanted to point out when Kath was talking about planting within the emails, just in case you're wrote planting, question mark. Essentially, it's let's say you work, okay, healthy wage. I'm going to assume that's something to do with money. So perhaps you've got a really nice welcome and you kind of want to understand what they want to do or what they want to get out of your business or services. You could find out whether it's about personal finance, where their interests lie, and therefore your subsequent comms in terms of your whole life cycle program will have nods or can be geared towards what they've told you they're interested in. So you've got something for nothing essentially. So that's what that's all about there, just in case. And then guys, what would be your tips? And I feel like you've kind of answered them within your answers because your answers were quite robust in terms of just identifying various segments. A lot of you have kind of said, look at everything from a bigger perspective. Sam, you said look at trends, obvious trends within the data, and see if you can pull things that way. Kate, you were mentioning about just downloading a list or a static list and kind of doing some A/B testing and trialing from that perspective. I don't know if anyone has anything else, because I do feel like your answers were quite well-rounded, you know, like a really good dish. Do you? And Cora, do you feel like you got your question answered? You know, just give me a high five if you feel like you did. If you want more, tell us, and we'll give you more. I think she's satisfied. Channels outside of email. So, you know, what would your top tips be for your non-engaged? And has anyone actually gone outside of the email toolkit and branched over into other channels, you know, crossed the road somewhere else? Who wants to take that on?
I'll dive in again. I think, yes, there's lots of different ways to do it. And I think there's variability depending on what your product is, what the life cycle of your product is. Like, it could be, you know, is it a one-hit wonder type of product? Is it something that you can re-engage and they can repurchase? Is it a subscription product or not? So there are variables to answering this question, I think, that are important to note from the onset. But really, at the end of the day, non-engagers, they dropped off for a reason. So you're not giving them something they need. Can you figure out what that need is by trying to provide them some new content, or even sometimes even asking direct questions? But are they engaged in another, to the question's point, a different channel? Are they still active in the social space? They're just not engaging with the email space. Are they looking at the Facebook page? You know, can you reach them that way? So yes, I think there's a lot of different ways you can figure out, okay, maybe they just have a different channel preference, but the message is still good for them, or you're really not giving them what they need, and they do seem to get the impressions in the other areas because they're already there. So figuring that out and what they are looking for and what they need it's a bit of a test heavy process, but it's worth it every single time, because usually the people that go dormant it's going to be for similar reasons. So once you figure out those reasons and then how to rectify those reasons, then you have a basis for a program to re-engage, typically. But I'm sure these people have some good things to say.
But I mean, no, I think you hit the nail on the head there with that, Sam. And that's really about, I think you need to define what your definition of unengaged is, right? Is it just unengaged on email? Are they still buying, but they're just not opening up your emails? Or are they not opening up your emails and they're also not buying, right? So, and there's different tactics for both of those. And I think that really, really needs to be clear, because I think we tend to bundle them all in together. And sometimes, because we're so focused on the email and engagement, we actually forget that the actual end result, or our end objective, is actually to get them to convert. And we sometimes forget to look at that data as well. So, you know, for me, tactics to actually be re-engaging those unengaged yet still buying, I wouldn't even be bothered, because to me, it's working. It's working on the nudge principle. It's basically whatever you're saying in the subject line, or possibly in the body of the copy of the content, it's working. They might have the images turned off, so you can't see that they've opened it, and they're not clicking through, but they're actually then going through and buying from the website and everything. It's working a treat. So I wouldn't necessarily worry so much about that. It's the ones that aren't engaging in email and also aren't buying. And those ones, yes, you can be setting up a whole heap of automated programs, but what I like to do is get your current unengaged, right, by that definition, unengaged and inactive, okay, not customers. And I like to get them and run a lot of tests to see what kind of offers, what kind of copy that works best with them. And once you've found out the winning kind of, combination, that's when you'll set it up as being an automated program, and then it just deals with them. And that helps. Once it's an automated program, that really helps also with your deliverability, because you're now no longer, sending to these inactive, huge segment, but you're actually sending it on a daily basis to a smaller amount of people. And also, one of the things, I've written a few articles on this too, is that humans, we tend to fall into kind of like 4 very, very basic personality traits, right? And we tend to look for things that satisfy those needs within those personality traits. And all the teams that I've ever worked with, even if you have a big team, you'll generally end up having it come down to 1, 2, or 3 people who are doing the designing and copywriting for that particular email. But you might have strategists and all the rest of it, right? So what happens is often it will be a case of they're actually writing and designing to satisfy their personalities. And so you might actually be, not intentionally, of course, but you might actually end up being sort of ignoring the other needs of the other personalities. So I would recommend reading into that, find out more about that, identify what the personalities within the team are, and see if you can all sort of, come in, because it does work a treat. And I tend to use that mainly with the inactive, testing, and to try and find out, okay, maybe we've just been writing it for 2 personalities, we're ignoring the other 2, and they're not seeing anything that's, suitable for them at all, and nothing that appeals to them. So that's also a good tactic to try.
Woo! That was the most robust answer I think we've had on Email and More. Andrew, Aaron, you are like the luckiest person. That was super duper fragilistic, expialidociously amazing. Does anyone, I don't know if anyone has anything to add after, yep, exactly. It's kind of like, let's just throw in the towel, because Kath just won that one. Not that it's a competition. But I really liked the advice that Kath gave, especially looking at the non-engaged, but they're actually buying. So that could actually now stipulate a different type of report as well, where you're looking at the revenue that's coming in from your non-engaged base, even though they may not actively be showing some form of engagement, seeing if there's still revenue ticking along. And that can also just help in terms of your decisions when you're segmenting your database. So really, really, really good stuff there. We've got another question, unless anybody wanted to add to Aaron's question. We gotta know. Okay, so I'm gonna move on. So Kelly asks, in terms of catering content to what they click on, what technologies or data tools can help without implementing a full preference center data feed? It's a bit of a, I know some people might have their preference of choice. So, you can answer as you wish. If anyone has ever worked with certain tools that have made creating content or, helping with segmentation so much more easier, but we're not promoting any brands over here, just to say. Disclaimer.
I'm happy to take a swing at this one, mostly because I've had some pretty limited data teams in the past, and small budgets, frankly, and so I had to get pretty creative with how I created behavioral segments. And one of the easiest ways that I found in the past is if your company or your business has a newsletter, and that Kath, to your point, you have maybe 4 different types of or personas of reasons that someone might engage with you. If you can gear your newsletter content towards those 4 distinct personas and find a way to do click tracking in your ESP, it's relatively simple to categorize links and say, okay, well, so perfect example, when I worked at Make Music years ago, our core demographics were basically band teachers, orchestra teachers, and choir directors. And it was really easy for me to find out what kind of content would appeal to different people. This is a super simplified example, but you can probably find this in your own business. When we would send our newsletters, we would just break up the content into, send everybody everything until we have enough click data to indicate that you might be interested in choir sheet music, or you might be a band and orchestra teacher at a smaller school, things like that. So I don't think you necessarily have to do enormous preference centers or big data feeds. I think just simple click tracking, if you give people the opportunity to tell you what they want more of, they'll do that. And there's a newsletter that I get, the Daily Carnage, that if you all haven't read it yet, I fangirl over the top little survey section in their newsletter every week, because they do the coolest thing. It's really simple, where they say, hey, like a poll, what are you interested in reading about next time? And it's literally just like a little thing that you click on, and they don't do anything else.
With you.
Right?
I love that stuff. It's like so simple.
It is. It's so simple. And every time I open it, I click on it, I'm like, oh, I want to read more about this. And the cool part is that I know that next time, whatever they send me is going to be based on what I clicked on, or what the majority of people are interested in. So it's a really easy way to surprise and delight. You don't have to get these complex RSS feeds or preference centers in place. And honestly, I think more often than not, they complicate things.
Yeah. So back in 2004, when I had my system, EasyMail, one of the most requested features was actually to be creating a segment based upon, a click that had been made. So it didn't happen by default. You just had to signify that that's what you wanted. And it's easy. And I know not all technology, not all ESPs allow you to do that, or CRM providers allow you to do that, but a good many of them do that. So, if you do have that capability, it's a very easy capability to use. And all it means then is that you are able to be, you've got a ready-made segment based upon what it has been, what they've actually put up their hand basically and said, this is interesting to me. And you can do it exactly but as Kate was saying, as simple as possible.
Yeah. I'm actually curious to know what Alexander's experience has been, because I suspect that I've been working with much smaller audiences. So I feel like at scale, this could be really exciting.
Yeah, so I think I'm probably not the best person to answer this question regarding tools specifically, because I have been lucky enough to have a fantastic data team and tech colleagues who have the skills and the capacity to develop this in-house. So most of the segmentation tools I have experience with are actually internally developed. But perhaps I can just follow up on what you said earlier, Kath, about understanding the reasons why customers churn, or why customers stop to order with you or engage with you. I think this could be super interesting to use, whatever they answer. Say that we send a survey to those users, or send an email and track what they're clicking on, to then follow up on that data and start creating clusters or segments based on it, and then treat them with type of treatment that they have reported with their engagement that they're actually looking for. I also think that this can be done with many other ways. So looking at just pure engagement data within the product. So both looking at trends on a holistic level and kind of try to cater for the majority of your user base, or whether that is to look at several types of trends and then do what you mentioned earlier, breaking down into different personas and take one step further in personalizing the experience for them. So I think this can definitely be tied to also your tactics for how to gather data for re-engagement, how to cluster users based on it, and then of course follow up with the respective treatments.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in to speak about the technology part and tools. I don't think the tool is as important as the strategic approach to how you're going to determine this information. So, Kate's example of this newsletter, I mean, yes, you call it a survey because it's asking you A or B. And you can be as direct as that, but you can be indirect and ask questions just by the, I've seen newsletters where they have different modules of content, but they'll have like a thumbs up and a thumbs down, and you can find out what people like throughout the whole thing, as long as you encourage them to actually interact with it. And your engaged audience chances are is going to interact with it. So there's a lot of different ways to apply it. But at the end of the day, I mean, start out simply. Use the click behavior because that's the simplest thing to do in just about any SP whatsoever. And so whether you have a data team or not, Alex has been super lucky, and I'm kind of a little bit jealous. But there's always a way to approach it that can be simplified. And you might start off in this kind of bare place, but you're going to get more robust information the more you do it. So persevere.
Amazing. Oh, some fantastic answers yet again. Oh, I love how on fire this panel is. So we've got a question from Alexandra. This is a good question. As a marketeer, I often struggle to prioritize brand and relationship building emails due to the lack of short-term tangible benefits. Do you have tips or suggestions to sell low revenue drivers that support longer term retention to the business? I feel your pain, Alexandra. I do. I feel your pain. It's super hard when you're just trying to, build the brand voice, build that relationship, kind of go through that journey of just saying, this is us, this is who we are. We're not all about selling. We don't want to sell. We just want to know who you are, and we want you to know who we are. But it's very hard when, yes, they're not really there to make some money, but essentially they do end up converting, funny enough. It's always the ones where they're not actually trying to sell. You find yourself making a couple coins from them. So who wants to help Alexandra with this question in terms of prioritizing brand and relationship building emails?
I'll jump in.
Hey, Kate.
All about the relationships. The track everything all the time. It can be so simple too. So I remember reading a case study, or hearing about a case study that I think it was a bank for veterans ran into a few years back about how their email marketer had this idea about a Lifecycle campaign that she wanted to run, and how she wanted to completely overhaul this campaign that helped people understand how to manage their finances. And it was one of those things that none of the emails in the campaign lent towards more dollars for the bank right out of the gate. But she tracked this she did a 10% holdout group where 10% of people got the old version for a full year. So it's an excruciatingly long amount of time, I think, for a lot of people to track things. But she found that there was so much value and so much added retention for the people who got this new campaign that she was actually able to map back revenue gained in that time based on this experiment that she just had the guts to commit to for a full year. So that's something that I tell myself anytime I'm like, oh, I know this is going to be a long test, or I don't have this statistical significance. But I think a good way to look at it is think about how frequently, or when was the last time that you updated your evergreen emails. And when you say to yourself, oh my God, it's been that many months, then I think that's a good gauge for how long-term tests can be effective.
Oh, I like that.
I think also what we talked about really briefly earlier about the CRM strategy as well. So do you consider, do you as a CRM team have as a main goal make the user engage with either your emails or with your product, or is the goal to make them convert? So just from the different businesses that I have been working with, for example, a taxi brand or ride-sharing brand, you cannot expect someone to take a ride when they receive an email from you. Simply, if I receive an email now, I won't just jump into a cab and go somewhere. It's more about this top of mind brand building, etc.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the step one of the CRM strategy there. Whereas if a food platform sends me a push notification right now and I start to get a bit hungry because it's already +6 in Germany and we like to eat on time, then definitely I will be open for placing that order. So hence CRM is kind of used in different for different purposes here, and I think that defining that goal is kind of step one. And then of course what we said earlier about also looking at the money aspect. So kind of if we have a certain unsubscription rate from engaging with users too often, or only sending incentive campaigns to users and nothing that helps them or shows our love to them, then they're going to churn as subscribers as well, and probably you will lose out on the possibility of ever engaging with them in the future, or you will see a dip in that long-term engagement. So it's comparing subscribers to non-subscribers or tracking that potentially decreasing engagement might also be something that management that opens management's eyes and starts to see the value of relationship building and not revenue generation.
Well,
I think.
No, go ahead.
Sorry. I think this all points to a problem that's common to many companies within the email marketing channel, and that is that we are very short-term focused. We tend to look at it as just being a direct marketing channel, rather than what it's really good at is it's a greatly to that. You may not see as Alexander and Kate were saying, you may not see the immediate benefit, but in the long term, it's going to be giving you, that. I mean, we've done it with a few of our customers, and they've, included in, because they were just sell, and we said, okay, let's try and break it up and we'll test it. And so that's what we've been doing, and the actual surprise and delight, or nudge campaigns as we call them, don't always bring high revenue. And if you do them well, they're high engagement, which does help with deliverability, of course. But in the long run, it keeps them being a loyal customer. It keeps them coming back and having a look, so that when, as Alexander was saying before, when they're ready, because the other thing about email as a push channel is that we get to push our messages to them in order to plant that seed, so that when they're ready, we're going to be top of mind. And that's why these campaigns play such a crucial role. Because if you didn't send them, then you're going to send them another, sell, or buy email. And yeah, as Alexander says, that can really turn them off. So, the consumers have really changed. They really want to, have that experience now. So we online need to deliver a lovely customer experience. And that means helpful marketing, right? So helping them, as Alexander said. So
yeah, Kat, you touched on something that I have heard before, and I think is really valuable to remember, that people aren't necessarily comparing you to your direct competitors. So they're not always comparing, what's a good example? So they're not always comparing Walmart's emails to Target's emails, right? Nobody's nobody on one team is looking at the other team's emails and being like, oh, okay, well, we need to do this and we need to do this. And honestly, that might be the reality of the teams, but from a consumer standpoint, consumers don't care. Consumers are they're experiencing your emails in the context of every other email that they receive. And so it's not competitor against competitor. It's when they get your emails, they're thinking about the best customer experiences they've ever had with any other company that's relevant. So they're just looking for something that's helpful, that helps them achieve their goals, that makes them feel seen and heard and valued. And they're going to go from there. It doesn't matter necessarily what your competitors' emails look like if you're not delivering on this promise of being helpful and there when your customers need you to be there.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback actually. You start with your case study reference, the financial one. I think that's a really good thing to remember is sometimes it's hard to provide a reason for a gut type of test that you want to do that is especially behavioral based versus revenue based. But, kind of sticking to your guns and just saying, we need to do this to measure the impact of the engagement, value over time. And it can be hard to sell, but at the end of the day, it's like, how much do you see in the data that basically supports this idea? And, committing to the testing and doing it very cleanly over that time frame that you need to capture it. And that can be hard to do, and it's hard to make that decision. But I don't think there's any brand that can't benefit in some way, but from having some sort of conversation email. Nurture email, giving them more information, things of that nature. Every brand can benefit from a connectivity of some sort with their consumer that's not selling them something. And the level of how much you want to share depends on the type of product and business that you are. But yeah, I think the perfect example is if you're constantly sending out discount emails or buy this emails, eventually I'm going to get really annoyed and I'm going to unsubscribe, or I'm just not going to engage anymore and I'm going to completely ignore it. But if you're telling me things that are interesting to me because that's why I signed up for your brand, that's different. So I say be strong and make a commitment to a test and be bold about it and see what you find out. Could be cool.
I love it.
Same. Again, I love just some really good, robust answers there. I feel like this is probably I cannot remember the last time that our panelists just, really delve into the answers. It's so cool. So, Alexandra, I really do hope that the panelists were able to help answer your question today. I feel like, there were some gems thrown out in there. I'm wondering if we have time for those who are watching us live. We do have roundtables after. So if you do actually have more questions, our lovely panelists are going to be on a roundtable. So you get to, see them live in action. Not like you're not seeing them live in action now, but you get to be on a table with them, almost like you're networking, and ask them directly your questions. But Kath, do we have time for one more? I'm not sure.
Yes, I think so. Just one quick one. I think so.
I think this question will be good for a quick one.
Yeah.
Right. Guys, how do you test your Lifecycle programs? How do you test? How do you test?
Going to be a to be.
I feel like
this is going to be a to be continued on the roundtables one, I'm sure. But if I were to say in a nutshell, I would definitely, because it's so hard. A lot of the life cycle ones are going to be automated. They're not always automated, of course, but definitely, I think that automated emails and automated programs tend to get a bit of they get missed when it comes to testing. So I'm a big believer in, and this works lovely for lifecycle programs, building in, when you're building your actual automated program, building in a B stream as well, right? So they have the same kickoff point, and then they'll split, and then you'll have a permanent A stream and a permanent B stream. And what that therefore means is that you can have a hypothesis. Once that has run its length as far as statistical significance and you're happy with the results, then you go and swap the loser out and you create a new hypothesis, and then you go and replace that. Now, of course, unlike campaign testing, it's not based on the number that's sent as such, but it's more based upon, well, it is, but it's the timing is going to be the significant, because the number of people are going to be dependent upon how long the program is running for. But we're not going to get through it all. Okay, we've still got, go for it, guys. I
can sense you really trying to rush through that. We've got trying to get all the gems out there real quick.
Oh, it's tough. Yeah.
Anybody else? I know it's hard. There's like 4 minutes. There's
no pressure.
Everyone's like, no, I need like 15.
Yeah, right. I would have said what Cass said anyway, because that was exactly what I immediately thought of, is always building in a test opportunity and not forgetting. There's no setting and forgetting an email. And that's an important thing to constantly remember, because even though you may automate something and you may have tested it, it doesn't mean it doesn't need further testing. Everything can be tested and refined and made better.
Yes. Yes, yes, and yes.
I would just like add two levels of complexity to this. So you want to, of course, measure your lifecycle program on a holistic level. So I think senior management is typically interested in understanding the ROI of your CRM efforts as a whole. So ideally, I mean, if you have a large enough user base, then having a global control group is something that really, really helps with this. Of course, it's not always that you have this luxury to set aside a significant share of your users from all of the stuff that you do that would usually generate revenue. But in the case that is possible, I think this is super interesting to look at. And then also what both you, Kat, and Samantha mentioned about measuring the lifecycle program stages, the lifecycle stages programs, perhaps we can call that, individually to see how that is performing. And then perhaps if your sample sizes are large enough, swap out a few of the individual communications in there as well to see what is performing better than what is not there or what is already existing.
Yeah, the thing I find trickiest about it is when you realize that it's a combination of communications that have yielded a particular result. So sometimes swapping out one email for another, it's like, oh, okay, well, this email may do better for retention, or this might pull more new team members in, or, you know, of course, every email has its own individual business goal or set of business goals that you're trying to meet. And I think the thing that's both challenging and really exciting about lifecycle marketing is figuring out what the combination is that paints the right picture of what your relationship should be with a customer and gets them to do the things that make them feel like, oh, this is really valuable for me too, and I want to continue to engage with this business. So I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that it's just, okay, well, we'll put one email in at this date and this will be the thing that changes everything. But it really is about painting the whole picture. And that's where I think long-term, exactly to your point, Alexander, the long-term holdout groups can be really valuable because you can learn a lot there about what that whole picture painted.
Amazing. And we finish just on time. Give yourself a round of applause. This is what happens when you work with pros. Okay, right. So that is literally all we have time for today. Don't you dare go anywhere. We do have round tables for you to join. But I just want to thank everybody who's attended this live event. Thank you, guys. And for those in the future that will be watching on demand, I want to say a massive thank you to you and a huge, 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 huge thanks to our sponsors. And of course, I can't forget our wonderful panelists for their amazing, valuable insights. I have to clap for you again. We see some clapping emojis flying out there. Thank you, guys. See, everyone is rooting for you. And for those who would like to stay on longer, we do have roundtables, as I've been saying throughout this whole thing. There are some roundtables. So you know what? Go on, turn on your sound, turn on your video, have a little chin wag. They're not recorded at all, so it's a safe place. And what do we call a safe place in the digital world? Chatham House. And Kath taught me that. So it means it's basically what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So you can be free. So we're going to move over to the roundtables now. And thank you again for your time this afternoon. Bye.
Bye.